Welcome back. Today, we are diving headfirst into a huge and fascinating question. It's one that connects ancient scripture, modern conflict, and our own deep-seated need for answers. We're asking, could the prophet Isaiah, writing thousands of years ago, have actually foreseen the wars we're watching in the Middle East right now? Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll get to know the prophet and lay out the big question. Then we'll look at how some people are reading today's news right alongside Isaiah's words. After that, we're going to jump in a time machine and visit Isaiah's actual world. Then we'll get into the weeds on a crucial difference, prediction versus interpretation. And we'll wrap it all up by asking why these ancient words still have such a powerful hold on us today. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the prophet and the question. It's all about how an ancient voice seems to be echoing in our very modern times. And this right here is the heart of it all, isn't it? I mean, can a voice from the Iron Age, a guy talking to kings and empires that have literally turned to dust, actually predict the complex conflicts of the 21st century? It sounds kind of wild, so let's really break it down. So first things first, who was this guy, Isaiah? Well, he was a major player, an incredibly influential prophet in the kingdom of Judah, all the way back in the 8th century BCE. And you have to understand, his world was one of constant tension, backroom deals, shaky alliances, and the very real threat of being completely wiped out by a neighboring superpower. So let's see how some people bridge that massive 2,700-year gap. This next section is all about what happens when you read today's headlines with an ancient text open right beside them. Now, this verse from Isaiah 17 is probably one of the most famous examples. Just listen to it. Behold, Damascus will cease to be a city and will become a heap of ruins. I mean, that is incredibly stark, specific, and frankly, chilling. And this is where it gets really compelling for some people. They look at the tragic, widespread destruction in Syria's capital, Damascus, and they see a direct one-to-one connection. For them, this isn't just an old verse. It feels like a prophecy that is literally being fulfilled in real time on their news feeds. But it's not all doom and gloom in Isaiah's writings. Take this passage. It talks about this amazing future time of peace. It paints a picture of a highway connecting old enemies, Egypt and Assyria, with Israel right in the middle, acting as a blessing to the whole world. And if you read this as a modern prophecy, this is pure hope. People look at the map, they see Assyria as covering parts of modern-day Iraq and Syria, and they see this verse as a blueprint for a future grand alliance, a path to lasting peace in a region that's seen so much conflict. Okay, so that's the modern prophetic take. But to really understand these words, we have to hit the rewind button. We have to travel back to Isaiah's original world and ask what was actually going on when he said these things. And wow, look at this timeline. Isaiah's world was just constant crisis. He barely gets started in his career and bam, his country Judah is attacked by a coalition that includes Aram Damascus. A few years later, the regional superpower, the Neo-Assyrian Empire, completely wipes his northern neighbors off the map. And it all leads up to the Assyrians surrounding his own city, Jerusalem. This wasn't abstract. This was his reality. So let's look at the players on this ancient chessboard. You've got the Neo-Assyrian Empire. They are the Death Star of their day, an absolute superpower. Then you have Isaiah's home, the tiny kingdom of Judah, just trying not to get squashed. Right next door is the kingdom of Israel. Aram Damascus is a constant threat. And down south, you have Egypt, always vying with Assyria for control. This was the world Isaiah was speaking into. So let's go back to that verse about Damascus becoming a heap of ruins. When you look at it through this historical lens, a completely different picture emerges. Historians would argue this wasn't a message for us in the 21st century. It was a direct, urgent warning to the people of his day about the very real threat of the Assyrian army, which, by the way, did conquer and wreck Damascus just a few years later, well within Isaiah's lifetime. This massive contrast really gets us to the core of the issue, and that brings us to our next section, prediction versus interpretation. It makes us ask a really fundamental question. How are we even supposed to read these ancient and powerful texts? Even the word prophecy itself is a little tricky. We tend to think it just means one thing, to foretell, right? To see the future, like you're looking into a crystal ball. But the original Greek word prophetess had a second, equally important meaning, to speak forth, which basically means to deliver a powerful message for the current situation, to speak truth to power, right here and right now.
So let's just lay it all out side by side. On the one hand, you've got the prophetic reading, which sees Isaiah 17 as a literal prediction playing out right now. On the other, you have the historical reading, which sees it as a specific warning for an ancient audience about an immediate threat. It's the exact same verse, but it's like looking through two completely different pairs of glasses. But what if it's not a simple either-or choice? There's this really fascinating third way of looking at it, sometimes called prophetic patternism. And the idea here is that maybe the power of prophecy isn't about predicting one single event. Maybe it's about revealing these timeless patterns of human behavior, how empires get arrogant and fall, the consequences of injustice, the way conflict seems to repeat itself. So the story of ancient Damascus isn't a prediction. It's more like a template, a cautionary tale. And all of this leads us to our final and maybe most important section. Why do we still care? After all this time, why does prophecy endure? Well, it taps into something deeply human, our search for meaning, especially when things feel chaotic. I think this chart really helps break it down. Look, a huge piece of the appeal is simply finding meaning. We want to believe that events aren't just random static. Of course, there's also a deep need for certainty when times are confusing, a powerful desire for hope that things can get better, and this really human yearning to feel connected to a story that's bigger than just our own lives. And that really gets to the core of it. When the world feels unstable, when things are frightening, these ancient texts can feel like an anchor in a storm. They seem to offer a framework, a sense of order and purpose. They whisper the idea that what we're all going through, no matter how hard, isn't just meaningless noise, but maybe, just maybe, it's part of a larger plan. So I'll leave you with this final question to chew on. Is the true, enduring power of a prophet like Isaiah about some supernatural ability to see our modern world? Or does it lie in the profound power of his words to shape how we see our own time? Is it about giving us a way to find patterns, to think about justice, and to search for hope right here in the present? A crystal ball or a mirror? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.